guys, this is CW. In this video, we'll be discussing Launchpads, project considerations, and also touch a little bit on DAOs. Today's special guest we have is the founder of ErgoPad, Marty. Welcome, mate.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. It's my pleasure. I think we'll just kick things off straight away with a Launchpad sort of explanation. So for the audience who may not be aware, can you please explain the concept of what a Launchpad actually is?
Yeah, so I guess basically a Launchpad is a way to sort of crowdsource or kickstart projects using community funding in a sense. So it's like using a Launchpad token, you can indicate that you're interested in participating in launching new projects on a blockchain, and that's sort of like your stake in the Launchpad and the new projects. And it gives you an opportunity to get in early as if you were sort of like a VC, something along those lines. So,
yeah, that's an interesting sort of concept as well, because obviously there's a little sort of bit of skepticism, I think, around the crypto industry in regards to sort of projects launching, being unvetted and things like that. And I think having that sort of instilling the confidence into the consumer that's coming through sort of a reputable entity like a Launchpad, I think it does instill that trust to the end user.
Right. Yeah, and we tend to do as much due diligence as we can for the projects that we launch through ErgoPad. So, you know, we definitely check on how they're going to set up their tokenomics, who the team is, what their reputation is, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a big part of it for sure.
Awesome. Thanks very much for that little rundown. So from a project's perspective, if they were looking to launch into the crypto industry, what are the benefits for them to sort of looking at utilizing a service such as a Launchpad?
One of the nice things about going through a Launchpad rather than raising funding from VCs is that, you know, a lot of times VCs expect to have such a large percentage of your company. So when you do go through VCs, there's a very centralized group of people who are telling you how they want things done, how they want you to approach the project. So the great thing about launching through a Launchpad, especially if you go in the DAO route, where you allow the token to represent governance of your project, it kind of spreads the intent of the project out between the community. So, you know, the community kind of checks you on your actions, and you get a lot of input from a lot of different types of people with different, perhaps different backgrounds, and it kind of helps you get to a point where, like the project stays really on track, because you have to outline everything quite specifically in the beginning, and the community will usually hold you to that very specific goal. So it's an interesting process.
Yeah, I bet. I think there's sort of a couple of more sort of incentives as well. Something along the lines of sort of development assistance. So being able to provide some developer assistance there through code work, etc. But then also some marketing assistance as well. Can you elaborate on that?
I just missed the first bit. Are you talking about in ErgoPad specifically, or?
Yeah, ErgoPad or Launchpad in general. Yeah.
Well, the nice thing is with the community, you'll have people look. I mean, everything we do is open source, so you have the community looking over your code, checking those types of things. You also have the community kind of being your own. They're also being a cheerleader a bit for your project, because you know, they think it's a good enough project to get involved in, and so they'll go out and tell other people to get involved. So it's nice to spread it out within the community and with a large group of people. It really creates that environment to build together and work together. It's one of the things we like about it.
Yeah, it's a bit of a community aspect, but then also everyone goes along on the journey with you as well, so they can see the projects that are actually upcoming, and then sort of get an inside I guess I'd call it inside information, but a first look basically at the person's white papers and those sort of things as well.
Yeah, because in order to launch a project, they're definitely going to have to outline a significant amount of the plan, the long-term plan. So yeah, if you're involved when the white paper comes out, and you get to see all those plans and you get to watch them as they're executed. So it's interesting to follow along.
Yeah, most definitely. At least that's a nice little segue into the next question. What considerations need to be made from a Launchpad's perspective when they actually sort of vet a project interested in utilizing a Launchpad service?
When we do vetting, we tend to look into the group's reputation in the community, uh, see what they've done in the past. We'll ask for like GitHub accounts. We can go over their previous projects, and you can kind of tell pretty quickly how much work somebody's, if they're just trying to make a quick buck or if they're actually trying to build something. If they've done extensive research and provided like a well-written white paper that, if they're aware of the market, they've done extensive market research, they know whether or not this is a viable product based on, how they've outlined the market that they can capture. Sort of the same as a real company. Like if you were to go to an angel investor or a VC and with a typical, traditional company, you'd have to provide a lot of this data. You'd have to get market analysis done, statistics, and you'll have to do projections in terms of success of your project. For example, like if you were able to capture like 10% of the expected market versus 30 versus 50%, or like worst case scenario, best case scenario, this is how well you'll expect the project to do. And white papers or teams that outline that in their white paper usually inspire the most confidence in us, and we can pass that along to our community. So a lot of the vetting is there in the white paper, and also in like, for example, if they've got industry experience that indicates that they'll be able to replicate their or create or reach their goals, like what have they done in the past that says this person could actually write the code to achieve this, like things along those lines. So it's a long process, and we do a lot of back and forth, and we have meetings and massage kind of the white papers and get everything dialed in before we present it to the community.
Yeah, it's most definitely important to have a clear sort of business plan outlining where you are, where you want to be in X amount of years, and then forecast into the future as well. Like I said, instill that trust both into yourself launching the project, but then also the community as well. In regards to the white paper development, is that something you assist with? If they don't really sort of have that business mindset or background, they might have the development sort of side of things. Do you help them sort of put all that sort of side of things together?
That is something we help with pretty frequently, especially with Ergo projects, which are more developer based. I'm sure anyone in the community is aware that it's very developer heavy, and there's much less on the marketing side and much less on the traditional crypto projects. Like you're not seeing a bunch of moon boys and that kind of thing. So we kind of have to make it, sometimes you have to make it a little more fun and exciting, because there's not that aspect. It's a little dry, right? I mean, not everyone understands the full development side of things, but they want to see like what's in it for me, how will I appreciate or enjoy this project. So we definitely do kind of try and describe the projects in more of a common term, and also help the white papers with the business side of things.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to make as well. Simplify it for the masses. There's often some sort of quite complicated sort of terminology thrown around, and for the most part, I'd say the everyday investor wouldn't know sort of too much or know too much of the technological side of things behind projects and things like that. So to be able to spell it out to sort of the everyday sort of normie in that respect, would be perfect.
Yeah, definitely one of the goals to reiterate it in normal terms, for sure.
Yeah. So from a economics perspective, what are some of the major factors to consider when like deciding the initial and ongoing sort of distribution of tokens for a project?
Yeah, token economics is one of the biggest things that we help with, or, I find I consult the most with the tokenomics, for sure. It's not simple to figure it out, because there's a lot of different factors and there's a lot of different players. If you were to just ask for a ton of money from people but not offer them anything in return, then nobody really is interested in putting money into a project if it's just take and take and take, you know what I mean? So you have to find a balance, because the team needs enough money to make the project a success. Developers are expensive, especially with the amount of inflation and the competition out there for good developers. And as well, you have to consider the pool of developers who understand ErgoScript is very, very small. So luckily, a lot of them have a bit of they enjoy doing it. So, you know, if you put together the right team, you can sometimes figure things out. But regardless, you have to pay everyone fairly, and you have to keep the lights on. So you want to find a balance between how much can you ask for from the community to get the DAO kickstarted, and how will they recoup that as the project gets built and as revenue starts to come in, because I mean, all these projects are meant to create revenue in the end, and how will you share that with the community that were there at the beginning? So, you know, we do try and raise some funds to get the treasury built up so that development can take place, and developers don't have to have 2 other jobs just to pay the bills. But at the same time, there needs to, you know, we do things like staking rewards. We do have to provide liquidity on the DEX. And now there's various other aspects, such as, for example, Ergo Dex is coming out with yield farming in the next month or two. And that will consist of, it's kind of like staking your liquidity tokens. So if you provide liquidity on the DEX, you may get an additional reward. It's just like Uniswap and PancakeSwap have been doing it for a long time. But the great thing about that is it'll encourage people to add liquidity to the DEX. But the other side of that token is that you're diluting the current holders.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's one of the economic structures that you have to consider. It's like people want that exit liquidity if they decided to sell. If you have zero liquidity, then a token could be worth whatever. You wouldn't be able to sell it for anything. So that's a consideration and a balance. Then there's get block subpools, where somebody can stake, or pardon me, where somebody can actually mine to the token. But that mining is sometimes those people who mine directly to a token, if they're getting a bonus, will sell to capture that bonus. They'll sell it directly for Ergo. So that can be downward pressure on the price. So there's all kinds of considerations, and we try and find a balance that's fair to all parties. So there's a lot to think about.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting concept as well. And a good point to make is actually having to provide liquidity on the DEX, not just only in your token, but the pair itself. So whether that's, say, token X and ERG, or token X and SIG-USD, you have to have basically double the amount to be able to provide that initial liquidity, but also having that sort of liquidity farming perspective as well, provide liquidity holders, or the holders of the liquidity tokens, to be able to sort of farm some extra interest in that respect, and be incentivized to do so. Yeah, it's a fine balancing line there.
Yeah, it's great that these tools are coming out. You know, you have Guap Swap as well, where you can mine directly to a token. So, you know, all these new things are coming up, and it's really good for the Ergo ecosystem, I believe. So we've just been implementing them as they show up in the tokenomics. So it'll be great to see in the coming months.
Yeah, that's very exciting. I think everyone's sort of pretty excited about what the future holds for Ergo. So I think it's pretty fair to say that you guys, ErgoPad, have built a pretty good reputation. Does this help attract capital for project IDOs? And sort of also following on from that, how does ErgoPad specifically incentivize retention and deployment of the said capital to projects?
So for part one of the question, yes, our reputation has, I believe, significantly helped, because thus far we've been working with people we believe are very trustworthy. You know, all the teams have been extremely transparent, and I believe the community appreciates the way that we operate, which is also very transparent. Anytime we've had an issue, we immediately express to the community, you know, this is what happened, and as a result, they've been extremely patient with us. I mean, we can't thank the community enough. I mean, there's been a lot of it's been a bumpy road to get this far. Anyone who's been trying to use our website has seen that at some point it's been very, very slow, and and we've just been doing everything we can to get it moving again and improve as we go. So it's been a great process, and the nice thing is it's all open source, so anyone can learn from our mistakes. But yeah, as far as reputation is concerned, it's helped tremendously, and the community's been very supportive. Part two of your question was, I believe.
So how does ErgoPad specifically incentivize like the retention of the capital, but then also deploy it into upcoming projects?
The capital that the projects themselves raise, is that what you're?
ErgoPad itself has the incentive, I guess you could have staking rewards and things like that to be able to sort of keep that retention. But then also, how does ErgoPad sort of specifically help the deployment of the capital that it's already sort of attracted?
For our IDO, we've basically kept that in the treasury, and we're using that on developers. So everyone who's working with us, we also have a marketing team and a community management team. So the people that are working with us have there is a payroll basically, and so like in order to get this far, to build the staking contracts, the vesting contracts, also maintain the website. I mean, servers are not cheap when you're running multiple instances of Ergo Explorer, Ergo Node. We've got databases running and various things. So all that stuff we've been using the funds for that, and some of the funds were in Ergo as well. So unfortunately, as the market has retracted, the treasury has shrunk somewhat. So we hope to have a recovery soon, so we can keep working long into the next coming years. But it's all going into development for sure.
Yeah, markets being markets, they're always fun, aren't they?
Yeah.
You mentioned the open source aspect to ErgoPad specifically. How do you think that instills the confidence into the end consumer as well?
I think open source is always the way to go in cryptocurrency. The whole point, as far as I'm concerned, of being in cryptocurrency is 100% transparency and decentralization. So how can you achieve that with closed source code? I mean, that may be an extreme viewpoint, but I think that it's, if we're gonna take the time to do it, to build it, and a lot of our funding came from the community, we may as well give back to the community with all the code we built. Like, it just makes sense to me, and why do it twice? If we've solved a problem, then somebody can come along and build on the foundation that we've created. So I think it just follows that open source is the way to go, in my opinion.
Most definitely, and in my opinion also. I think it's a good point to raise as well, is instead of doing things twice, you provide the key concepts to the developer community, because they might not just fork your code directly. Like, say I create ErgoPad Classic, for instance. They might be able to just take little snippets of code that they might be troubleshooting or things like that. They can look into your code and be able to sort of move their project forward. I think that's a really interesting and sort of exciting aspect to what the open source community brings to cryptocurrencies.
And we borrowed from the people who came before us. So when we got started, we used a non-Rails assembler service, which got us through a lot of the beginning of our project. So without that, I mean, I don't know if we'd be where we are today. Without Ergo Dex, we probably wouldn't be where we are today. So, the fact that there's this foundation there, it's all for the growth of the ecosystem and the community. So,
is that one aspect that you sort of push for the projects that you're sort of launching? Having that open source framework?
Absolutely encourage people to develop in an open source way.
Yeah, that's great to know. So once a project has actually launched, they may consider running their treasury in a decentralized manner. even through a decentralized autonomous organization or a DAO, for instance. Can you explain what a DAO actually is?
Yeah, I think there's a few different opinions of what a DAO is and how it should be run. But for me, a DAO would mean that it's decentralized, meaning that the control of the organization is decentralized amongst a group of people. So there's no one single entity who decides everything that happens.
Yeah.
It's autonomous, which means that there should be a preset rule system that determine how the organization operates, and that should be automated. So somebody couldn't come along and just say, well, I've changed my mind, we're going to do it this way. And it's got code behind it that makes that impossible, and that makes everything follow a specific rule set. And it's an organization, meaning it's just any group of people that have a common goal. So what we're trying to achieve is to create the code on chain, where once you put your treasury into a DAO, into a smart contract on chain, the rules are, people who are holding the token that represent their vote in that DAO have to vote on the decisions that DAO makes in terms of how to spend the treasury and various other settings. So that's kind of the whole idea behind it. Can I elaborate further, or did you want to?
Oh, I have another follow-up question just in regards to what you just mentioned there. So it just ties into this one. You mentioned treasury funds, and obviously the crypto industry can be quite greedy and corrupt at times. Obviously, there's a lot of sort of money at stake often. How does a DAO sort of help with minimizing the greed and corruption from exploiting treasury funds?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question regarding DAOs, because it's huge. If anyone who's been in crypto for more than a few years have seen how many times people get rug pulled. And if you raise funds from the community in the way that we are, and you put it directly into a DAO that has preset rules behind how it can be spent, and the community gets to vote based on the number of tokens they have, you kind of put that guardrail in place and say, if the people who started the project want to take that money out and run and do a rug pull, they can't, because now that those funds are on chain and they're protected by the smart contracts behind the DAO. So I think that's a great use of DAOs.
Yeah, most definitely. In regards to sort of DAOs, they can often become quite centralized. Is there any sort of mechanisms that you think a DAO can sort of implement to push the power to the edges, so one person isn't, say, running one wallet with, or say 5 wallets with a 3 or 5 sort of signature scheme? Is there anything you can kind of do to instill the trust for the community in that respect?
Well, I guess there's a few different concerns. One would be kind of a Sybil attack on the DAO. If one person, or are you meaning like if one person holds so many of the votes because they hold like 25% of the tokens or 50% of the tokens? Is that?
Yeah, so you can have from that perspective. So they have a large stake in the actual sort of treasury or the token itself, the governance token, but also one entity or one person may have say 5 wallets, but then just signing on behalf of 3, for instance, if it's a multi-sig wallets or a multi-sig DAO.
Right. And then because it's an Ergo address, you can't tell that it's one person behind those 3 wallets.
Yeah.
I guess that depends on how you structure the smart contract and how you build the DAO. And it's one of the things that you can see outlined in the tokenomics when you do look into any project that launches as a DAO. Like, for example, if, say, the community holds 50% of the tokens and then the other 50% are held by the team, then you'll know that it's a little bit imbalanced. There's some centralized control. Sometimes you want there to be a very focused direction for the organization. So if the team behind it is something you trust and a group of people that you trust to build a project, then maybe you want them to hold a large percentage of those tokens. Yep. One way you can kind of mitigate it is using quadratic voting, where 10 people with 1 vote each have more power than one person with 10 votes.
Yeah.
But as I mentioned earlier, a Sybil attack, somebody with 10 tokens could just make 10 wallets and vote 10 times and have the same amount of control.
Yeah.
But it's complicated to do, and it's more work, and it's more costly. So it really depends on the motivation behind it and the outcome.
Yeah, most definitely.
There's so many aspects. You kind of got to take it on a case by case basis. And one of the things we'd like to do is experiment with different ways of setting up DAOs and through the Paideia platform.
Yeah, that ties into the next question. Thanks for the segue once again. So ErgoPad's developed a DAO framework, Paideia. What are the mechanics behind Paideia, and sort of how does that help reduce said corruption that we've just been discussing?
Paideia will allow a few different governance structures and a few different voting mechanisms. Yeah. So at the MVP, we'll probably keep it quite simple. It'll be basic quorum voting, which means you set a quorum, which would be like, for example, 25% of token holders need to vote for something to pass.
Yep.
I think it depends on the DAO, and you'll have to be careful what you set that quorum at, so that you know that things can pass. But then, and then you also get to choose whether or not a 51% is a pass or a 60% for is pass and things like that. So those are sort of the basic, just linear voting. Like anyone can make a proposal. You require a specific quorum and a specific number of votes for it to pass. The other option we'd like to implement, and perhaps we'll implement at MVP, is optimistic governance. So what that would be is when somebody initiates a DAO, let's say you've initiated a DAO and you don't want anyone to come along if they had just a few tokens to start and creating a bunch of proposals and potentially derail the DAO. I mean, the other problem with a DAO is like, not every decision demands everyone's attention, and not everyone has enough time to pay attention to all proposals. So what optimistic governance does is you choose certain individuals who are whitelisted at initiation, or they can be added later, where only those people can make proposals. So it could be the core team. Maybe there's 8 of them. Maybe there's 3 of them. You trust them to have the best interest of the DAO in mind, maybe because they have the most financial incentive or because they're the founding members. They're the only ones that can make proposals, but anyone in the DAO can challenge one of their proposals.
Yeah.
So in optimistic governance, you assume all proposals pass unless challenged. So let's say the time limit's 3 days. If I were one of the whitelisted individuals and I make a proposal to spend 10,000 USD of the DAO's funds on marketing, I would make my proposal. And if everyone in the DAO thinks that's a good idea, then nobody's going to challenge it. And so there's no vote. And after 3 days, it just passes and the $10,000 is released to the wallet that's set as the recipient.
Yep.
If people are like, no, this guy's just trying to extract 10 grand for his own purposes, he's not actually going to do marketing, or we don't need marketing, what a waste of money. Yep. They challenge the proposal, and then it goes to a vote and everyone can vote. So that sort of tries to streamline the operation of the DAO, in that we trust these people pretty much, but we have some protection in case they start to screw us over. So I couldn't just rug pull because everyone would challenge that. The other thing is, in optimistic governance, to make a proposal, you have to put up collateral. If the proposal goes through unchallenged, you get your collateral back. If the proposal is challenged and you lose the vote, you lose your collateral. So
that's a really interesting concept. So it has to be something worthwhile.
Yeah. So if you're putting something that's probably not going to be taken well by the community, you're risking your own funds to try and push that through. So it's another kind of guardrail in place that's like, well, I'm not going to waste my time pushing through proposals that are unlikely to pass because it's going to cost me money. And another way, if it didn't cost you money to get something through that's nefarious, is maybe do 100 and just hide one sneaky one in there. So if it costs you to make every single one, you're not going to do that. You're not going to exploit it that way. So that's optimistic governance. And we mentioned quadratic voting earlier. So So those are some of the ways we're going to try and test the waters and see what kind of DAOs will develop around Paideia. So
Yeah, and obviously it's sort of specific to each project as well, how they sort of want to be governed and everything along those lines. I think it's important to say as well, like there are incentives, but also disincentives as well for, like you said, nefarious actors to be able to sort of take advantage of a DAO. So I think that's really great.
Yeah, and it's outlined in some detail in the white paper too. If you have time to check that out, you can find that on our website, paideia.im.
Yeah, by all means, jump over there and check out things further. I think that sort of wraps things up, mate. Is there any sort of last words you want to mention in regards to sort of the economics of projects, the governance side of things, or anything as such?
I think we actually covered quite a bit. I think that was a great chat.
Yeah, no problem, mate. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Once again, it's myself, CW, and Marty from ErgoPad. It's been a pleasure, mate, hosting you, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for having me. Take care, everyone.
Take care.